You are forbidden from even reporting on the news if it did not come from state-run media. If you do, you will be arrested. Your social media account will be deleted, and you will spend time in a re-education camp prison. You didn't toe the line. You're causing social chaos, as they call it. They like to call it social chaos. And you will be arrested.
Adapt 2030 Mini Ice Age Conversations covers changes in our climate due to a new and intensifying grand solar minimum, and the media overlooking, downplaying, or burying cold weather changes occurring on our planet. This is in order to keep the global warming agenda steaming full speed ahead. I do this podcast and radio program because we need to begin conversations on how to adapt our food growing strategies long before 2030 as agricultural zones shift, affecting global crop output, but very few mainstream media outlets are talking about the most important issue of our time: cold weather crop losses. Our sun is going through a 400-year cycle, which has effects on our weather patterns as our magnetosphere weakens and the jet streams go out of flow. It's not CO2, it's not you, it's the sun. Are you ready to thrive in the grand solar minimum? Then join me for Mini Ice Age Conversations. I'm your host, David DuByne.
Now that's in China, and they have their own system, and they have their own thing going on over there. We globally, I guess, have accepted it as violations of everything left, right, and center is okay, as long as we get our stuff cheap. Awesome. They can go ahead and put up firewalls and political prisoners and organ harvesting and rights violations, and that's all great as long as we get cheap stuff, because all of the governments have never pushed back against that. So it must be part of the plan. Because the world I grew up in, people would take a stance and say, no, that's not good. But the new world we live in, it's like, cool, let's expand the economy. Who cares if you put a few people in a gulag for their political beliefs? Keep the bonds coming. That's the world we're living in reality. So the Chinese are trying to perfect this, and they're getting really good at the control and flow of information to the point where in that country, and this includes foreigners as well. Don't think you're just a foreigner, you're going to go over and visit, that you're outside the loop of this. This includes foreigners as well. If you have any kind of Weibo account or any type of, social media within China, Tencent, or anywhere you're floating around inside that sphere, if you as a foreigner share that information too, you are eligible for arrest in the country. And I want to focus on the weather here for a minute, because I had some people, I will not even say who they are. I'm not even going to tell you if it's man or woman. I'm going to protect them that much. Sent me some photos of some massive, massive floods over in Sichuan province. They were not allowed to talk about this. The government had come out and said it was a small flood, and there were a couple homes that were flooded. But I've even put these images in a couple of my videos where they have entire homes floating down the river, buildings collapsing into the river, whole towns completely washed away due to substandard construction, drainage ditches breaking open, dam basins broke, all these types of things that were just poorly constructed, malfunctioned with the amount of water coming down. And it created, you should have seen the floods. It was biblical. And entire parts of the city were washed away. Now, people were arrested for sharing some of the photos, not the photos that were given to me, but for sharing that very same story that the state-run media in China had said, just a couple homes flushed away, and that's all you can report, period. And people went out and said, no, look at my backyard. I have all these photos, and I got this thing on my phone, and here's in my social account, and I wanted to show you the footage. Man, I can't believe like a quarter of our city washed away. They were arrested for sharing weather stories because it wasn't approved by the state-run media. The videos weren't approved videos. See, this is where it's going, is those videos that were shown of those houses and parts of the city being washed away, those were non-approved videos. They weren't approved by the state government to be released to the public. But citizens released them, and that was a no-no because it wasn't approved.
And this episode's brought to you by TrueLeafMarket.com. Heirloom and organic seeds since 1974. full range of garden seeds, microgreen seeds, sprouting seeds, wheatgrass, grain seeds, flower seeds, herb seeds, and ground cover crop. I encourage you to take a look at their website, trueleafmarket.com, and they even have free starter guides there for you to learn how to grow sprouts, microgreens, herbs, and wheatgrass. Use the link below and give yourself the gift of organic and heirloom seeds.
Now, we're going straight into the ministry of truth here with this new link tax in this Article 11 and Article 13. It is unbelievable that the European governments think that they can actually take control of the planet's internet. You know, China hasn't even tried that. China's just happy sitting over there controlling China within their own little bubble and having their own little firewall up there. Great, let them do that. We've all condoned it, obviously. Unless you're on the street out there with a sign, all the governments condoned it. Nobody's taken a stance and said, don't do it. They've even bent over backwards to help this thing go forward in China. But look how far it's gone there, that they've actually implemented those laws to arrest people just for weather stories that weren't approved. Now, where are we going to go with this? This is the first caveat and the first foot in the door to do the exact same thing on a global level here. You know, they say the fallout from the decision will be far-reaching and then the final vote will be in January 19th. Here's the thing. They snuck that upload filter directive, Article 13, in at the last moment in the vote. It wasn't there before. Just the link tax was. And they snuck that in, and everybody voted on it and said, great, we're going to approve this. What else are they going to sneak in on the final vote, then, that we don't see or can't know about because it's all secret until it's passed? This was not up for public debate. This was not up for public scrutiny, public viewing, public review, public comment, zero. This was a full-on secretive agenda passed by the oligarchs to control your ability to pass information. Now, I think, as well as Christian and a few others out there, that this is all to stop the flow of information of the Grand Solar Minimum when the crop losses get to the point where it's going to destabilize governments. Because how many percent of the bottom population cannot eat before they start to throw a spanner into the works here? Let's say 10% of any one country. It could be anywhere. I'll even use the United States because a lot of you listening tonight are from the U.S. I'm from the U.S. I know this culture the best. I can talk about it. Let's say the bottom 10% on food assistance cannot afford their basic necessities due to the food tripling in price. And something happens where the government can't keep up with the food costs because it's happening too fast. So the laws they're passing to raise the EBT or the food assistance programs is, 6 months behind, maybe 8 months behind the real cost of the food. And these people start rioting in the streets and looting supermarkets and banditry like we saw down in Venezuela where they were stopping trucks on the roads and just pilfering anything of food off the trucks. I saw this most incredible video. I'm sure you can look this up. They stopped a truck with 5,000 chickens on it. And there must have been 200 or 300 people out there, and they just went up and ripped these boxes of live chickens off the truck, just toppling them onto the highway. And people were running out, smashing open the boxes with the heels of their shoes and, grabbing chickens. Oh, you need to see the video as to where it can go when people get desperate. So let's go back to the mind experiment here. Bottom 10% of any country can't afford to eat at all anymore because food's too expensive, and then the next year is going to be even worse because the crops are going to be diminished further in the yields. From this point forward, I tell you what, this is the last year we have had stable harvest seasons on this planet, at least for the next decade. Now, it's not going to last indefinitely, and no, it won't. We're going to go through a small correction and a squeeze point for humanity here. This is where your armament is. This is where your quiver of arrows is to understand the information. So you can move out. You can come with understanding, not fear. You can find your niche. You can help people. You can create a difference, and you can provide value as we move forward. That's the reason I do the channel. That's the reason I spend my time here. I got 2 hours I've been talking to you. The reason I spend my 2 hours here is so we're all in this together, and I hope you're more informed. And I hope we move together as an informed body of people. The only way to take control back is enough people say no at the same time that they understand that we have more power than they do. And it's time for us to utilize that power and say no to a lot of these laws that are being passed. I didn't condone that. I had no vote on this. I had no say, and I don't accept it. That I can't even share my thoughts and ideas on what I see in a news story because they're going to try to tax that, and now the platforms are going to cut everybody's speech off. Not forget free speech. I'm just talking speech is going to be cut. What happens when one city starts igniting from food riots and they don't want you to report that to the next city? You know, information flow is dangerous today because the people that are in power or consider themselves in power have no control over it any longer. It's a genie out of the bottle. Cryptocurrency is the same thing. The genie's out the bottle and it's not going to be put back in. So the global corporate controlled media is going to have a very specific narrative to feed you and push your emotions. They know what to say. They know what stimulus to give you, so you will react in a certain way. The outcome's already known. They've been studying this for, a century or more. They know if they push button A, you will do reaction B. They already know that. Now, when it comes to trying to keep a cohesive government together and keep cities from burning to the ground, they're not going to want you sharing information on what's happening. Hungry people are desperate people. They're going to be doing crazy things that it's, some of these movies that we see about the zombie hordes walking around, I really believe that's what it's going to be with the masses of starving people. They just switch it. They're trying to say it's a virus. Well, what if it is a computer virus? Where you can't get money out of your ATM. It's a computer virus. The just-in-time delivery credit system broke down. Created all these zombies because they can't eat. They're walking around looking for food, hordes of them. Maybe if you just switch a couple little pieces in that narrative in those movies, it makes more sense. So let's take a look here. I'm going to finish up with the Article 1113. It even applies to companies like Google when they link their stories. So let's say the Google search engine. See, I think some of the big tech's going to push back against this law because this is going to be affecting Google as well. So even if Google in their Google search engine links to a story, the person that created the story can demand a paid license from that. Sharing of unlicensed copyrighted material. So Google links to that Guardian article that I talked about the food crop losses, but they say, hey, wait a minute, we didn't give you authorization to link to us. Now you have to pay us a tax. So what is Google just going to start delisting everything because they don't want to pay the tax? How many YouTube videos are out there talking about the news? Is YouTube going to come back in and then delist every video that's ever talking about news because they don't want to pay the tax? Oh, well, legally we can. It's a private company. We can delist every video that ever had talked about news because we don't want to pay anything. Facebook. Now you can share cat photos. Awesome. That is the way to work. I just want to see more cats, actually. I haven't seen enough white fluffy kitties on the Facebook post yet. Give me more because I can't talk about food crop losses. This is kind of where the whole thing is moving. And again, the burden's going to be on the smaller platforms to try to keep up with the link tax and the upload filters. So the article continues on here, and they say even Wikipedia founder Jimmy Wales and the World Wide Web inventor Tim Berners-Lee are super strongly against the directive because their whole platforms, or at least Wikipedia, is all linked on linking. It's all based on linking out to other links that provide credence or credibility to some of the pages that are in there in Wikipedia. Now, Wikipedia in itself, you could go on for days and days about censorship inside that platform and how you are unable to edit or add edits into those pages on Wikipedia that are on sensitive subjects. Like go into the global warming page and try to put anything about solar cycles, not going to happen. That is one of the most tightly controlled pages on Wikipedia. As well, 9/11, go in there and try to talk about Building 7 collapsing, and you're not going to get anywhere. That won't even make it through the sandbox. They have people on those pages 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to scrub whatever kind of edits come in. so you can see where we're going. Now, I want to come back to talk about the Gutenberg Printing Press. I want to take you back in the 1500s here. Gutenberg Printing Press, 1600s, modern minimum, same time, right? Ottoman Empire forbid any type of typesetting in Arabic language and forbid anything or anyone to have a Gutenberg printing press. If you had a Gutenberg printing press and you were caught in the Ottoman Empire with the printing press, you were burned alive. That is crazy how badly they did not want that in there. They were afraid of the spread of uncontrolled information. This is not a new thing. This goes back millennia. This goes back millennia when people were terrified. Roman Empire, terrified that you would spread information. Go back into Russia. Anybody who even had a typewriter in Russia was arrested and sent to gulags because, again, they were afraid that you could spread information that was non-state controlled, not state authorized. Ottoman Empire, Gutenberg Printing Press. Rest of Europe adopted the technology, and the Ottoman Empire was left in the dust, never to return. They have not led on anything in the last, 100 years? Let's say. So you can see that trying to suppress technologies that allow communication often backfire. Now, the Ottoman Empire was just a single point on this planet, so it bordered itself and roped itself off, no printing press in there, no technology like advancement inside ways of communication. But the rest of the world outside was thriving and flourishing and spreading information and sharing and finding new ways to communicate and come together and create groups and organize a network. And then from there was the next step and the next step and the next step. But where are we now when we come to this? It's a global thing. Now, there's one little gray area in there where it says that the member states are able to implement the policies the way they deem fit. Now, this is another great, amazing gray area. Maybe somebody left that in there on purpose because there has to be at least some light in the darkness the oligarchs of unelected officials in Europe. So you start to see the break already in immigration policy in Hungary, for example, Poland. There's a lot of countries over there, Czechoslovakia, or I should say Czech Republic in the old Czech lands, Croatia. They absolutely do not want any immigration into their countries, and they are fighting tooth and nail against the oligarchs and the unelected officials to say, you're not dictating immigration policy in our country. We're our own sovereign country. Italy's pushing for it as well. They don't want any more immigration coming in. And now they're starting to take a stand and push back. So I'm wondering if the same thing's going to happen with this internet censorship bill that's out of Europe, where member states will be like, well, not here. If it's not a cohesive action against all and amongst all member states in the EU, I think that it might not work. I mean, you see what has happened so far with the EU trying to regulate the rights that you give to a website to collect your data for privacy. Some websites have just banned everybody from Europe coming. That was one simple way. But again, it's like the Gutenberg printing press. Do you ban everybody from coming to your site? I mean, how much of your traffic's from Europe? How much revenue is that going to cost? How many eyeballs? How many possible communication networks could that knock down out of your network by just banning Europe altogether? So it seems that a lot of people have taken the steps to get the privacy data. So every time you click onto a site, you have to click that little button that says, yes, I understand you're collecting this. Yes. You can put a cookie on my computer. Yes. You can do all this. All right. So a lot of sites and companies have gone through the trouble to accommodate the European laws on the internet. But this is an entirely different animal here. We are talking completely shutting off all communication between parties here if this global link tax and the content upload filter goes through in the European Union and it spreads globally. So then you have to think about alternative methods to communicate. Are we talking about going back to the ham radio?
And since I have been talking about our need moving forward in this new society that we're entering as our global grain production starts to be reduced in yield, your food prices are going to skyrocket. And I mean skyrocket, not just doubling or tripling, something like 5 or 10 times higher by 2020 at the very least. TrueLeafMarket.com. I really want to talk about growing your own food, which will be a necessity moving forward. They've been around since 1974, heirloom and organic seeds. Since I've started talking about them in my videos, I have a lot of people write and say that they've previously ordered, that they know the owner, having great results, good customer service. They quite enjoyed the seed quality as well. There's so many ways that we can go about growing different types of vegetables that we're going to need. Microgreens are incredibly nutritious. They're super fast to grow. In less than a week, you can have something that you can eat. And we know the benefits of microgreens. All you have to do is use a search engine and look up vitamin, mineral, nutrient content of microgreens. You'll be shocked. Also, sprouts. We can get those a little bit taller, a little more dense, a little bit larger volume on the vegetation mass coming off of there. So how do you know what kind of sprouts to grow? How about wheatgrass or herbs? What about different types of herbs that we can add to our foods? Now, what I just described to you, there's a full range of starter guides there at TrueLeafMarket.com for you to take a look at. Even if it's just for your own knowledge and you don't purchase something from them, at least get the information so you know how to grow microgreens, you know how to grow sprouts, you understand what some of the herbs are for. And not only that, they have wheatgrass and grain seeds. So when I'm talking about grain growing regions going offline, we just need to look back in history and see where across the planet there was difficulty growing grains when this grand solar minimum intensified and the jet stream started wandering just like they're doing today due to a decreased magnetosphere that does not hold our jet streams locked in their traditional flows. Grains are one thing, herb seeds are another, cover crops, something different, but whatever you do, organic seeds are going to be a necessity because you can save those seeds and then grow them the next season, which you unequivocally cannot do with GMO. TrueLeafMarket.com. Use the link below and give yourself the gift of organic and heirloom seeds.
And I'm so thankful that Freedom Slips here allows this program to be broadcast. Revolution Radio Studio A, still a value point, freedom to be able to speak like this about these very same issues. But talking about these headlines and the news titles, at what point does some larger body come and say, hey, you guys are broadcasting news about news and you're not paying your link tax? They're talking about things that are copyrighted. You don't have your upload filter for audio on. At what point does it stop? And actually, what point do we stop it? It shouldn't even be stopped by itself. It should be actively stopped by everybody listening and everybody you know pushing back against the EU directives. This is unacceptable, totally unacceptable. And it only stops when we say it stops. You understand that in life. Like, these things only stop when we say it stops. Not when they dictate it stops. When we say enough, it stops. You notice that every time in history. When the masses say enough, it stops because they just can't get away with it anymore of their blind subservience to whatever they say. Have you noticed that? It is a trend in history that always continues. The masses dictate what the rulers can get away with, or they try to get away with. And I hate to even use the word rulers because I don't see them ruling over myself. I see a bunch of sociopaths at the top in their little club up there trying to pretend that they rule over stuff and having jackboot thugs come in and try to push policy on others. But again, it's the same thing. If you get enough jackboot thugs coming in and the neighborhood stand up or a city stands up, you can drive them out. Bundy Ranch. Remember that? Feds came in and all the local people got together and then pushed the feds out. And they never came back, did they? That was another instance of standing up and saying, enough is enough. You're not welcome. It doesn't work here. Go back. And these internet taxes and these internet link taxes are the exact same thing. The censorship is unacceptable on the net. It can't go anymore. Because your life's really going to be on the bound here. Your life will be in the hands of this internet law. If you cannot share information on where the losses are happening, where you can access food, where you can find food, what's happening, where the riots are, what's happening, where the shipping channels are open, where the banks are still working, where everything's still functioning, and you have an access point to come in and draw resources to you, well, They're cutting off your lifeline, literally. And at this point, I really believe this is a life or death choice for people with this type of information sharing left on the net. This is it. This comes down to this. If they are able to get away with this, the entire planet turns into China. It turns into global communist, socialist control. And that's the road that's going to go down if this is accepted with just blind subservience. They will not. This is a crossroads of humanity right here, whether we accept this or do not. And you really need to look into what's happening with this particular set of laws going on and the reasons they don't want you to communicate amongst each other. It's not about that they're trying to stop it. It's the reasons that they don't want you to communicate. Like, for example, I'm over here on 9news.com Australia, talking about temperatures plunging below average across South Australia, wiping out crops. Okay. The new link tax, I will not be allowed to share this inside Facebook with you. I will not be allowed to talk about it or put it in my social media stream to talk about how many of the crops are being lost in Australia and then what the pull will be on the futures market comparatively. That will be unacceptable, and I won't be able to share it, nor will you be able to even know what's going on in the outside world. Now, if I bring you over to Polar Portal, which is run by the Danish government, it's a sea ice monitoring site. If we come over here to the sea ice thickness and volume on Polar Portal, and I look and I say, whoa, the melt season has stopped already. And it looks like we have the, what's that, fourth or fifth least amount of ice, which means ice has gained back, right? Because 2007 was the very least amount of ice for the year. And then we came back and it looks like 2016 was another really, really low year. But then the ice is much more than these last couple of years. So this is scientific data. This can still be shared under the new law. Apparently, this is not copyrighted, and I might say yet. So what would it take for the global oligarchs to not want you to share this information because they want to be telling you it's CO2 and you're responsible, and they want to try to drive global taxes because you're changing the environment? In reality, it's the sun causing so many of these changes going on with the human input of particulate pollution, not CO2. But what if they were to pass laws in their own countries to now make all of this scientific data coming off of, research sites funded by your tax dollars? What if they're going to suddenly flip that in the laws and make all of this copyrighted information? Then you won't even be able to share the sea ice thickness through the new link tax. You see where we're going with this? Like, how far are they going to take it? But they have a very, very short time window to do so because the changes you're seeing, they're already amplifying, and this is just the cusp. Like all these food crop losses and the 10, 12, 13% inflationary food price structures going on across the planet now, that's just the beginning. 10% this year, 70% next year, 150 the following year, and you're looking at double prices, right? At what point do they start to make the scientific data copyright so you can't share it? Now, let's see, that's my next thing. You can already see where they're trying to go with this thing. So you just have to take the steps out there with them in their minds. They're going to try to control this data so you can't share it. They're going to start with the thing, oh, you can't share movies. Fine, we already did that back in the Napster days. Can't share music, whatever. All these sites where you used to be able to go on and take a look at free movies. What was that? Movie 4K, something like this. Movie 2K, where you used to be able to go in and just wind up a whole bunch of movies and watch them streaming for free. Understood. Okay, those are all closed. Now they're coming down to you can't even share a news story. And then what are they going to do? I can see them already going for this. You're not even going to share scientific data. And then I could see it, the final thing, if you decide to write your own commentary on it, they're just going to shut down the ability for you to communicate, because even if you have your own copyrighted material that they deem is unacceptable to share, they're just not going to give you a way to share it, which means they're going to go back to the Gutenberg Printing Press days, and they're going to become the Ottoman Empire. They're going to fall so far behind because our ability to communicate in the new tech world is miles ahead of that. How about going old school like the ham radio? Can you imagine how ironic it would be if the new information dissemination and the biggest stations on the planet were ham radio operators that were going against? That's funny. Think about that. It's going to move a lot of people to the dark web. You know, and again, they've scared you to death for ages about the dark web. The dark web is so scary. It's just drugs. It's just murderers. It's just this and that in the dark web. Well, actually, in reality, 99.999% of it is people who are oppressed groups communicating outside the oppression mechanisms inside their own countries. I'll agree there's some nastiness on the dark web. Yep, there is. But you notice the media has pushed that is the only thing on the dark web. There's so many groups that communicate there that can't do it openly above the ground on the World Wide Web because they'd be persecuted, arrested, and murdered by the governments in the countries they live in. So again, you see a coordinated effort across all corporate media to just demonize that dark web, that don't even go there, don't even look at it. If you look at it, your eyes are going to burn out and you're just going to fall out of your skull just by even looking at a single address on that thing. And I mean, many of you listening probably got that same exact feeling when I said dark web. You're like, ooh, dark web. But it's a way an enormous amount of people communicate that are oppressed groups across this planet at the moment. So is it going to move down there? What about buying your own satellite? I mean, there's satellites for rent. I mean, you got to go outside the box here. If people are going to try to cut down your ability to communicate, you're going to have to be a couple steps ahead of thinking, all right, what can I control around my own local environment that I can still use to disseminate this information? Should I buy my own private satellite, one that's almost defunct and not really used by any networks anymore? Should I buy that and use it as my own private satellite? How far can you go? What do you think are ways that we could communicate without having to rely on traditional internet, that messages could still be pushed across? Because remember, they've been telling us, and I'm going to come over here to Dr. Roy Spencer's site, they've been telling us again and again and again, it's the hottest year ever, and July was the hottest ever, and oh my gosh, if you just even went outside, you melted. And the tar, you know, the roads across the planet all melted this year. People couldn't even drive because every road on the planet melted.
This video is brought to you by our friends at TrueLeafMarket.com. Heirloom and organic seeds for any grow zone on our planet.